So now time to look at the normal line after bishop d5, where black plays e6 immediately. So here is the position. And we all know today that the best move for white is to play f4, and that's how the opening theory was developed, with number of options for black, but we should refrain for a moment from looking at f4. There are also ways for white to continue its steady development and trying to prepare long castle, so to move the queen. The problem is that after queen d2, black could play h6, and now if bishop goes on h4, then knight takes e4. So it just doesn't work. So if white wants to prepare long castle, it has to move its queen to another square, and that's f3. In fact, this move was very popular. White didn't want to start with f4. He decided to postpone it for a while and to make this long castle. As a matter of fact, it was already mentioned that queen f3 was played by a weak player who faced first Najdorf against Don Miguel himself in 1939. But then even Najdorf experienced problems when queen f3 was employed by much stronger players. And the game that I want to bring to your attention as a very instructive one, it's played in 1954, and the player on the white side was David Bronstein. And we always could expect David Bronstein creating new ideas. Just don't forget, it was 1954. The opening theory was not developed, and immense creativity of Bronstein could find a lot of room to be displayed in Najdorf. So knight bd7, castle, queen c7, and here they said Bronstein has spent 58 minutes contemplating the move queen g3. So in modern chess, with FIDE time control, he would probably lose in time in next 10 moves. But at that time, in those old good days where players had 2.5 hours for 40 moves, Bronstein could afford the luxury of thinking about opening problems and coming up always with amazing ideas. So it doesn't look that white created much of a pressure on black's position. But this quiet move, queen g3, actually defended white against black's main idea to play b5 and then b5, b4, pushing knight on c3. We'll find out that in all the sharpest lines of Najdorf, this idea is always a key for black counterattack. Najdorf probably didn't see much of a difference, and he played b5. And here it comes, the Bronstein's idea. Bishop takes b5. Normally when somebody is sacrificing the piece in the opening, you expect a winning attack. Threats created against an opponent's king. While Bronstein's idea has nothing to do with an attack. It was of playing an endgame with a piece down. And after a takes b5, knight db5, queen b8, knight d6, bishop d6, queen takes d6, and exchange of the queens, Bronstein reached an endgame. And that was his idea. White has 3 pawns for a knight, but those are 3 passed pawns. Moreover, black's extra piece cannot be employed very effectively, because white pawns, especially these pawns on e4, they are cutting these pieces from being active. It's difficult for black even to activate them, and after h6, bishop d2, bishop b7, f3, that's what's happened in the game. We could see that this stronghold on e4 cuts black knight from f6 of going into the battle, and after b3, inevitably b3, the c4 square not only a great square for a black knight in Najdorf Sicilian, is also taken away. Probably here Najdorf made decisive mistake. He played short castle. Very natural move, but obviously in the end game you'd better keep your king close to the action, close to the part of the board where the where decisive battle is going to unfold. And of course, long castle was much better choice, where black king could actually help to prevent steady advance of white pawns. So after castle short, b3, rook f8, king b2, knight c5, and bishop e3, you could see that black has nothing to offer to stop the gradual development of this unfortunate game for them. Bronstein won very convincingly by just pushing his pawns, and I strongly recommend to study this game as one of the most instructive game for this kind of material, disbalanced material, because the idea of bishop takes b5 is employed by white in many different lines of Najdorf Sicilian, and very often, even in the modern lines with bishop e3, you can find these type of positions. The same material, slightly different configuration, but you could see that how black light square bishop plus 2 knights is fighting against white's dark square bishop, and the knight on c3 with white 3 passed pawns on the queen side trying to advance. So it's another example how you could learn from the ideas of the past, and how in certain positions the ideas presented by great players are still very relevant, even in today's modern chess, where computer analysis are often more important than general ideas. So the game was quite impressive, and of course black tried to figure out how to avoid this unpleasant endgame. So they looked again at position after queen f3, and that's how the opening theory actually made its progress. If white goes with bishop with queen on g3, then maybe it makes sense to push bishop on g5 immediately, so to attack it with h6. In fact, this move actually took over and became the main line for black. Now white has a choice. One of them is just to take on f6, and we reach an endgame where black pawns are spoiled. And of course, if white bishop, for instance, could appear on h5, after bishop e2 and then bishop h5, then it would put a pressure on f7. But of course, it doesn't happen, because after bishop e2, black always play h5, and this dream goes off. There were a number of games that proved that black position was absolutely solid. In fact, I played one game against Nigel Short in Sarajevo. He played f4 here, and after h5, f5, he tried to attack this square on e6, this weak pawn. But what's happened after knight c6, rook d1, bishop d7, bishop c4, and black could play king d7, and that's a difference, because in the end game all the sacrifices are not doable. So that's why black king is well placed on e7, and after bishop b3, bishop h6, black had already a solid advantage, because another rook went to g8, and then pawn goes on h4, so attacking pawn on f2, and the bishop has squares on f4, potentially 3, but of course it's just the best square for this bishop was on e5, where it just attacks on both sides, on the queen side and the king side. Nigel saved the game by miracle, but it has nothing to do with the opening. So taking on f6 is absolutely toothless for white, and white always stuck with bishop h4